Hello, I'm Mrs. Thomson. For those of you who don't know me, I'm one of the assistant principals at Chobham Academy. Today I'm going to be talking to you about resilience. There are 4 pictures on the current slide. Think about what you understand by the word resilience and how each of these pictures may represent resilience. Think about the differences between the pictures and decide whether you think one of them is a better representation of resilience than the others. Resilience is a word that we can use to describe the physical attributes of an object, particularly objects like the elastic band we saw on the previous slide. However, resilience is becoming more and more commonly an area of research in psychology, with researchers keen to determine the key characteristics of psychological resilience. So what have researchers decided? Ledesma has described resilience as the ability to bounce back from adversity, frustration and misfortune. Think of the picture of Mr. Happy bouncing along on the previous slide. Perhaps the picture suggests that resilience is a key component of happiness. Happiness is not simply a disposition you're born with, a set of external circumstances such as wealth or professional success, or even the luck of having never faced challenges and adversity in life. Indeed, if this were the case, the poorest people in the world wouldn't be capable of happiness, and yet we know that this isn't true. Walsh said that resilience is the ability to withstand and rebound from disruptive life challenges, strengthened and more resourceful. Again, we see the idea of bouncing back or rebounding. However, Walsh goes a step further and states that we are strengthened by overcoming obstacles. Unlike the elastic band, we do not simply spring back to our original shape. Rather, we are like the tree which withstands the winds yet bends and adapts so that it can thrive in the harshest conditions. This idea is taken up again by Maston and Southwick, who argue that adaptability is the key to resilience, emphasising that resilience isn't an innate quality that we're born with, but is rather a set of skills, attitudes and behaviours that we can learn and improve. I recently came across a story which perfectly demonstrates the human capacity for resilience. You will find out more when you watch the video on the link below, but to sum up the story for you, in June 1965, 6 Tongan boys, all pupils at a strict Catholic boarding school, aged 13 to 16, decided to steal a boat and run away to Fiji. They packed 2 sacks of bananas, a few coconuts and a small gas burner, but didn't think to bring a map or compass. That night they fell asleep and awoke to a storm which shredded their sail. They drifted for 8 days without food and water, managing to collect some rainwater in hollowed-out coconut shells, which they shared equally between them, each boy taking 1 sip in the morning and another in the evening. On the 8th day they spotted the island of Atta and managed to get ashore. It was this island from which they were rescued by Australian Peter Warner some 15 months later. Watch the video to find out more.
When Manu Tatau was just 16, he had an experience that changed his life forever.
Sometimes I sit down and I think about the island. In the 2 years that I was there, sometimes I could not stop crying.
In 1965, he was one of 6 teenagers from Tonga who borrowed a boat and attempted to sail to Fiji, only to spend 8 days lost at sea before their boat was wrecked on the coast of a lonely island called Atta.
Somehow, they managed to survive there for 15 months. So I thought it was a completely amazing story.
When historian Rutger Bregman set out to tell their incredible story, a more grim tale soon came to mind. Lord of the Flies, the best-selling novel that became a classic movie.
Who'll join my tribe? I will join. I'm chief, and what about the fire? And I've got the conch.
I read it when I was 16 years old, and I remember being, well, more than a little depressed after finishing it, but also I had the feeling like, well, this is how, probably how real kids in the real world behave.
Life at the moment is idyllic for the 6 Tongans who once gave up all hope of seeing civilization again.
It was just really incredible to find out that The real Lord of the Flies is a story about friendship and cooperation and human resilience.
Rutger Bregman tracked down survivor Manu Tutau, now 72 and living in Brisbane.
In the beginning, in the first 3 months, we eat things raw, and it is not much to eat.
And some of the tastes they developed during their isolation are still there. Raw fish, for example, still makes the best breakfast.
They made a garden, a badminton court, even a guitar from coconuts and driftwood.
Next, they made a house.
Eventually, they built a thatched dwelling and ways to capture fresh water.
It was beginning to seem like home.
The interesting question, obviously, what made them able to survive, right? Is there something in human nature itself? Is it something very specific to Tongan culture? I think it's probably both, right? It's probably both.
And that's how our culture try to teach us to respecting each other and try to be love to each other, no matter how hard the life is.
After 15 months, they were rescued by Australian fisherman Peter Warner, who spotted their fire and brought them on board before calling Tongan authorities by radio.
And just 20 minutes later, a very tearful operator came back on the phone. He said, "It's amazing. They've been given up for dead. Funerals have been held and you found them." We were met on the beach by tearful parents. Very emotional scene, like the prodigal son returning.
I still count Peter today as my father, because I know if he doesn't come in the island, and I won't be here today.
If we assume the best in other people, we can also bring out the best in other people. The reality is that we have one example in all of world history of real kids shipwrecking on an island. And it's this incredible story of human resilience and friendship. I mean, I'm just saying we should tell this story, for generations to come.
In the YouTube video you've just watched, the Dutch historian Rutger Bregman compares the plight of the 6 Tongan boys to William Golding's novel Lord of the Flies. In the novel, a plane load of schoolboys is shot down during a world war, with the boys stranded on an uninhabited island. The boys seek to set up their own democracy of sorts, but the boys soon give in to overpowering primordial urges to fight and kill. Bregman's own research argues that for centuries, Western culture has been permeated by the idea that humans are by nature selfish and violent creatures, but that recent psychological research and real-life stories, such as that of the Tongan castaways, paints a much more hopeful picture of friendship, cooperation and resilience. So what is resilience, and how can we increase our resilience? Resilience could be defined as a combination of the following skills, attitudes and behaviours, all of which we are able to practice, change or improve. In order to increase our resilience, we first need to identify our strengths and weaknesses in each of these areas. Learning from your mistakes so that you don't repeat them in future. Understanding and accepting your own strengths and weaknesses and seeking to improve on your areas of weakness. Self-control. This may be in terms of controlling your emotions, controlling the way in which you express yourself when in conflict with others, deferring gratification and avoiding procrastination. That means not putting off your homework till the last minute. Willingness to overcome difficulties rather than to avoid problems. Optimistic and positive thinking patterns. Developing social skills, as well as the ability to seek help from others. The ability to recognise your own emotions and those in others. Problem-solving skills. Setting goals with realistic expectations. When preparing this assembly, I came across another definition of resilience, which encourages us to identify the sources of resilience in our lives, which fall into 3 categories: I have sources, that is, resilience promoting external supports and resources. These could be family members, friends, your form tutor, a behavioural mentor at the academy, a sports coach, or an Air Cadets leader from outside the academy, or even the wellbeing bulletin sent out each week by Mrs. Robinson or a mindfulness app on your phone. I am sources. These are internal resilience promoting qualities such as feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. These could include the ability to think positively or to think about your problems from a bigger perspective, or even to approach challenges with a dark sense of humour. I can sources. These refer to resilience promoting social and interpersonal skills. That is, your ability to forge relationships and to ask others for help. What struck me about these three categories is that two of them are about our ability to develop resilience outside of ourselves, in our relationships with others and in our community. Resilience is not about suffering alone or overcoming adversity as an individual. Asking for help is a sign of strength and great resilience, and it is not a sign of weakness. It's hard to prepare a virtual assembly on resilience without reflecting on the current situation. In the last 10 or 12 weeks, you've all been faced with a challenge that I never believed we would face in my lifetime. You've all been locked in, starved of the freedom to access outdoor space, to see friends and to enjoy social connections. You've all faced challenges in continuing with your learning at home. Some of you have been ill and some of you have lost loved ones. During this time, you've all shown a great deal of resilience, and for that you should be commended. Now is the time to reflect on the challenges you have faced and the resilience you have shown. You may wish to use this moment of reflection to think about God or to focus on today's theme and message.
Dear Year 12, Miss Kibella here. I hope that this assembly finds you and your families well and safe. When someone says the word perseverance to me, I tend to imagine someone demonstrating physical endurance as they run a long distance race or climb a mountain. Even though perseverance is not just about physical strength, my thoughts of combating and achieving a strenuous physical task, such as a marathon or a mountain climb, is still extremely useful and relevant. The sentence used by the Cambridge Dictionary to better understand how to use the word perseverance is, "Through hard work and perseverance, he worked his way up to the top." The fact that I am speaking to all of you now and you are mentally preparing yourself for sixth form education proves that you have done just that. You have persevered through hard work for the last 11 years of your educational life and have now reached the top of your secondary experience. You have now reached the peak of continuing that perseverance into sixth form education, and many of you will continue on the road of perseverance as you eventually apply for and work towards university placements. But is it fair to say that perseverance only relates to educational or physical endurance? I don't think it is. There are so many young people around the world that have had to persevere through adverse conditions, through the pandemic and not knowing what tomorrow will bring, through the atrocious footage recently posted all over social media of marginalised groups in society being oppressed at the hands of the law. I see so much strength in all of you as the next generation who face these challenges every day and yet rise each day to fight towards your dreams, to acknowledge the challenges and injustices many face, but you came to school every day because you had purpose. You will come to college every day from September because you now have a renewed purpose, focus, and objective to become the very best version of yourself. Keep running your marathons, Year 12. Keep climbing your mountains, Year 12. The peak is in sight and you will succeed. You will be successful and you will persevere. Take care of yourselves and your families. Until next time.
Warning, this video may contain scenes of heads exploding under pressure. We all feel pressure to get things done. Just because we're in lockdown doesn't mean that our lives aren't full of things to do. I'm sure you sometimes feel there are too many tasks competing for your attention. Schoolwork, responsibilities around the house, even social commitments. Like the poor victim in this notorious James Bond scene, it can all sometimes get a bit too much. Now, it might seem obvious that writing a to-do list is a good thing to keep track of what you have to do, but there are good ways to write to-do lists and obviously less productive, perhaps even damaging ways to write your to-do list. So here's a list of things to do and consider when you're making a list of lists. Number 1, write your to-do list physically in a book or on paper. Have it somewhere you can see it while you're working. So putting it on your phone will obviously give your subconscious an excuse to get distracted by whatever it is you want to be looking at. Don't give it that excuse. Instead, paper, physically in front of you, there it is, no avoiding it. Number 2, distribute your tasks between different days or maybe even weeks where necessary. Address the most urgent tasks first. When do you need to have taken out the recycling by? Is that before or after the deadline for your English coursework? Number 4, if something's on your mind as needing doing, write it down. There's no item too small that it can't go onto your to-do list. If it's in your head, it's taking up space that you could be using mentally to focus on the task that's in front of you. Once you've written that little task down, you won't forget it, but you also won't have to keep thinking about it. Number 5, break down your big tasks, especially those that are worrying you, into smaller tasks that it will require. Don't put write coursework on your to-do list. Instead, break it down into more manageable chunks. For example, read coursework text, research alternative interpretation, read over notes from lesson, write 300 words of the essay, etc. Number 6, consider how long each task will take you and only assign a task to today if you have the time to get it done. If not, find a better time to give it your full attention. And finally, number 7, there's nothing sacred about a to-do list. Add tasks, cross them out, move them around. If you get to the end of your day and your to-do list is only half done, be glad that you got that half done and think about how to redistribute the remaining tasks through the rest of the week. All of that should help you manage the pressure.